Women's work in ancient Israel basically revolved around the household. So women were responsible for probably preparing most of the food and cooking most of the meals. We know this not only from the biblical narrative, but also from archaeological evidence, as well as ethnographic and iconographic evidence as well from the ancient Near East. We also know that women spent a lot of their time spinning wool, weaving cloth to make the clothing for the family members, as well as other articles. Women were primarily responsible for educating young children and also older children to prepare them for their roles as adults, both girls and boys. They also participated in religious activities, took part in festivals and feasts, were of course played a major role in life cycle events, of course birth, but also weddings, marriages, death. In terms of women's economic activities in the Israelite period and in ancient Israel, I think there's more evidence for women who lived in urban areas, and also the biblical narrative informs on these sorts of issues from time to time in terms of women owning property and being able to buy and sell. In the village level, it's harder to say, what kind of participation women would have had in that kind of public life. So not that there's such an easy dichotomy between the kind of private and the public. It's just that there's not a lot of information, I think, that informs on women's participation in those kinds of activities. So we learn a little bit about women's roles in religious practices from the Hebrew Bible. There are bits and pieces of information that tell us about their participation in certain festivals, pilgrimages, trips to the temple and things like that, but we don't have a lot of detail. So archaeological evidence is very important for trying to understand the complexity of women's religious experiences. So at the household level, in ancient Israelite houses, it's possible sometimes to identify what we call like cult corners, where there might be some sort of altar and some small objects that were related in some way to the household cult. If those things are found in association with artifacts and installations related to women's work, like ovens and grinding stones and cooking pots and those sorts of things, then we can, say that this is women's space and that they were doing multiple kinds of activities in that space. So the kinds of things we find would be figurines, amulets, and usually these kind of items were used to protect women during pregnancy, to protect their newborn from evil forces, and ensure fertility just in general.